Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for attending. We are very excited to offer this program, an overview of the FY2022 New York State Executive Budget. And we also would like to thank our friends from the Watkins Glen Area Chamber of Commerce for participating in today's discussion. It's wonderful anytime we can have these presentations to hear directly from the state about things like the budget. So whether you were able to catch the governor's State of the State address or executive budget overview or not, I think this will be a great way for all of us in the Southern Tier to hear more about it. And so we're very excited to have you here today. Just a reminder, we are recording today's session. So please keep that in mind. We will present this presentation through our YouTube page. We'll share it out to all of our attendees later for anyone who wasn't able to attend. Also, if you have any questions, you can submit them via the chat box, and if time allows, we will toss a few questions to our presenter today. Any questions we're not able to get to, we will send them off to our friends at ESD and try to get some answers for you. So as I said, today is an overview of the FY2022 state budget, and thank you again for participating with us. Just a quick update from Commerce Chenango. We have a couple other events coming up. Every year we host an economic outlook briefing, and that is still happening on February 25th. This is going to be done completely virtually this year versus the breakfast that we normally have. Thank you to our wonderful sponsors, MBT Bank, and our supporting sponsor, Preferred Mutual. This event will be free for all chamber members. If you are not a member of Commerce Chenango, it will be just a $10 fee. Also coming up, save the date, on May 12th, we will be hosting an all-day webinar. It's going to be a series of sessions called Talent Pipeline and Population Recovery Strategies. We're going to be having a series of discussions, roundtable discussions about exactly that, how to attract the workforce, how to keep our population in Chenango County and the Southern Tier strong. So please save the date on that, and we'll be sending out more information soon. So next, I'd like to welcome our distinguished speaker. We have New York State Commissioner of Agriculture and Markets, Richard Ball. Richard Ball has served this position since 2014. He began his career in agriculture at the age of 18, working on a vegetable farm in Rhode Island. For the last 27 years, he's been the proud owner and operator of Schoharie Valley Farm in Schoharie, New York. The farm consists of 200 acres and produces a wide range of vegetable crops, small fruits, greenhouse crops, and serves both retail and wholesale consumers through an on-site farm market. Rich held a number of positions within agriculture and community at the local, state, and national level, including the New York State Vegetable Growers Association, in the New York State Farm Bureau, the American Farm Bureau, and the Schoharie County Chamber of Commerce. So he knows what we do here well. He currently serves as Vice President of the National Association of the State Department of Agriculture Board of Directors, and he's also the President of Food Export Northeast. Richard's family is proudly engaged in the farm operation in Schoharie. So he has a lot of wonderful experience. I know many of the people viewing today are in the same line of work. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Commissioner, and when you are ready, you can begin the presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. See if we can do this. Stand by. Mm-hmm. All right. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, you were. Thank you.
Oh, gosh, thank you. Well, thank you for the very kind introduction, Carrie. And yes, I have sympathies for all of you who have are helping out with the Chamber of Commerce. Lots of volunteer efforts there and lots to do. Appreciate that very much. I also want to recognize the other co-host from Watkins Glen, Michael Hardy. Thank you. George Senac, I understand, is with us, Chairman of the Chenango County Board of Supervisors. Welcome to you as well. Philip Wade, Mayor of the Village of Bainbridge. I've spent a lot of time in Bainbridge. Robert Jeffrey, the Northeast Classic Car Museum, which we remember because frequently we've held this presentation at your facility. So thank you for being here. I understand Donald Brown is with us from Chobani, a great partner. We'll talk about that a little bit when we get to some of the presentation here. and Elizabeth Monaco of the Chenango United Way. Thank you so much. I also want to recognize the governor's reps. I'm sure everyone knows Phil Rumsey and Carly Norton, two outstanding representatives for the governor in your area. And with me here in the office in Albany, I have Yola Shubielski. So between us, if there's questions you have, we'll do our best to answer them. If you don't have the answer right for you, we'll certainly get back to you very quickly. What I'd like to do today a little bit is I'm going to tell you a little bit why I'm here. Talk about how I came to be in this position just a bit. We're going to go over the budget presentation that the governor shared with us in the legislature and the public, a series of slides here coming up. I'm going to tell you then a few things that I have concerns about in agriculture and a few things that I'm excited about. And then we'll pause, and if people have an opportunity to think of a question, we'll look forward to doing that. So we'll get started here, I think. So 2020 has come to an end. I'm not going to read every slide. I assume everyone can read pretty well. I will make a few comments as we go along. And yes, amen. We're all looking forward to another opportunity for 2021. And I do think this year is going to be frankly, a transition year. We went through an unprecedented 2020, just COVID-19 pandemic, and it affected us personally, socially, and professionally, and affected our food supply chain in a big way. But this year will be, how do we transition out of that mode? How do we build back better? How do we look ahead? And so reimagining, rebuilding, and renewing, I think a good theme. The governor has outlined a 7-point action plan. Obviously, dealing with COVID is front and center, dealing with the short-term economic crisis, looking at the long-term pictures, shifting our economy towards a green energy economy, and capitalizing on some changes. Some of the things that we've learned from COVID that were highlighted, frankly, by the pandemic on New York State, and then continuing to address some injustices also that were revealed at the same time. The challenge of vaccinating everyone is huge. The challenge with getting people tested, as you recall, was pretty large. That took an awful lot of effort, and now we need to vaccinate, which is going to take even more effort ×2, as we're going to need 2 vaccinations. The rollout here is got to be very carefully thought out. We saw that COVID impacted certain of our communities much more seriously than others. The Black community, for example, was impacted twice as much, and the Latin community 1.5 times as much. So some challenges there that need to be dealt with. This is kind of an exciting idea, a public health corps, and hiring an additional 1,000 fellows to assist with this project is pretty aggressive, pretty amazing. Cornell University and the SUNY system are going to help to certify those young people. I think that's an exciting effort, and it will help us get the job done. Telehealth is certainly something as familiar to all of us as remote and Zoom meetings have become. With the challenges with being together personally, this is going to be a priority as we go forward. I think one thing that we learned early on with the pandemic was that we need to have supplies handy to us in New York and not depend on a foreign country for those needs. I would say the same thing about our food system as well. So test kits, getting them here in New York State and having them available for us is going to be pretty critical to our mission going forward, clearly. Because of COVID, the impact to our budget is no secret to anyone, I don't think. We're looking at a $15 billion deficit, which is a pretty scary prospect. Clearly, the states cannot manage things like that alone. And Washington, D.C., federally, we really need the help on it. So the governor, as he was outlining the budget for all of us, put it together with a couple of options. One is that worst case scenario, $6 billion came towards New York State. And the more workable one, that we get $15 billion from the federal government. I think most of the states are pretty united in this thought. Certainly, I know all the state departments of agriculture across the country are united in that thought. In the case of the worst case, we're looking at trying to make up that budget deficit gap, trying to find $9 billion. That would mean some very dramatic things and things that would have long-term impacts on the state clearly. Looking at the better scenario, we can get back to doing the things we need to do and certainly supporting this budget, this agenda as we go forward. This has been a theme for a number of years running now from the governor and from many other states who were affected by the state and local tax. We need to deal with that. And the governor indicates here that that's cost New Yorkers about $30 billion over the last 3 years, hurt every part of the state. Certainly the southern tier is no exception. That's a dramatic number per household for sure. Also, it's been something that's been in the works for some time now. The change in the Farm Bill, the change in legislation around the country, and how do we take good advantage of it here in New York? We're looking at a possibility here of quite a lot of tax revenue coming in. Department of Agriculture, we're involved from the side of industrial hemp uses. Department of Health is handling the adult use cannabis. Mobile sports betting is an opportunity to raise some funding here in the state. I know the governor and Department of Budget are looking at how to do this in a smart way so that it does advantage the state as we go forward. The idea of getting reopened in the economy safely and with confidence. The idea of an app which can reveal your testing, recent vaccine status. So kind of like taking the Buffalo Bills experiment with testing and being able to confidently go in public is going to be an important ingredient here. I know the governor had people from the arts with him at a press conference here, I think about 10 days ago. They're very optimistic, very excited about 150 pop-up performances across the state, helping to capitalize on getting them functioning again and getting the economy back to some semblance of normalcy. To help incentivize that, some tax brackets for that sector. Obviously, so many people faced rent challenges when they lost their incomes and their opportunities. So that's going to be a continuing progress. The Moynihan Train Hall is just mind-blowing. I don't know how many of you have had an opportunity to go into Madison Square Garden to Penn Station. On a normal year, I'm there pretty often. And just a block away, the brand new Moynihan Train Hall is just breathtaking. And I'm happy to say of the few things that have moved in there as we just opened, Taste New York, representing New York agriculture, is right there. The long-term economic future is still bright, focusing on a number of projects in the southern tier and around the state. The governor is quite an investor and focusing very hard on infrastructure around the state in a big way. Construction on the thruway service areas. We've done some work at a number of welcome centers that we put up around the state. But continuing that renovation plan is going to be important. And round 2 of the upstate airport economic development and revitalization to help us get around the state when it's safe to do so as well. This is kind of an exciting opportunity that's facing us with the passage of the CLCPA, addressing climate change and getting the green economy going in a big way. I sit on the CLCPA, the Climate Action Council, and represent the Ag and Forestry Working Group panel. I'm happy to say that agriculture has a place at this table. Lots of renewable onshore solar and wind and hydroelectric projects are underway. A number of projects right in your neighborhood, certainly, making sure those create jobs for us as we go forward. You can see them listed here. The offshore one is very exciting, pretty dramatic, and it's the nation's largest. Going to make a big change there. We've got 5 ports in the state, including those upstate New York and Albany and Queens. They're going to be a part of this going forward. We need to clean up the arteries, though, if we're going to move this power from where we can generate it all around upstate New York to where the biggest demands are, which is obviously in the metropolitan areas. So a very aggressive program to revitalize these pathways to get the energy where it needs to go, part of the plan. SunEast getting involved in a big way with training. We're going to need a lot of people trained and up to speed on this new energy economy. And the governor is creating a commission on the future of New York's economy. So basically, we've gone through COVID-19. We've learned some things, hopefully. We need to kind of pool our mental energy here and figure out a way to build back better as we go forward. Clearly, workforce development is a big part of this. We've got to get people up to speed and ready to work in this new economy as we go forward. SUNY obviously will be a huge part of that. We've learned some things about being having to work remotely, about being not able to see each other and do the normal things every day. The need for a reliable broadband and internet for everybody to participate in the economy is going to be very critical as we go forward. Obviously, challenges with healthcare are front and center virtually every day for families all around the country and certainly here in New York State. Obviously, systemic injustices have got pushed to the front of our minds as we saw some of the impacts that COVID shined a bright light on. Childcare, certainly a big challenge to families when, you know, kids need to be watched at home and parents weren't able to work normally. Certainly, this has been nothing new and something that we've seen coming, but COVID-19 really, again, pushed that to the front. Homeless has been something that in the past budgets we've spent some time talking about over the last several years, and clearly this remains. Nourish New York, and there's a Chobani truck right there, Don. I'm pretty proud of the Nourish New York program. If you remember in the early weeks of the pandemic, I can recapture a conversation I had with one of our largest dairy cooperatives in the state. And certainly we were in close touch with Chobani, who was stepping up to the plate right off the bat to donate product where it was needed. But in that first week, one of our largest cooperatives for dairy in the state had to reroute several hundred truckloads of raw milk away from a cheese plant and away from a powder plant and redirect them to a fluid milk plant because they couldn't keep up with bottled milk in all the grocery stores. And that went on for about 2 weeks. Third week, we found ourselves in a situation where dairy plant silos were full of milk. There was no place for it to go. Warehouses were full. We still had a problem with getting supply in grocery stores. And yet we had farmers forced to dump milk on their farms. We went to the governor with this, and in 1 week we stood up the Nourish New York program, where we enabled our 10 regional food banks around the state to be allocated $25 million in emergency health food funding. We got them the funding literally in a week. The following Monday, we were on the phone with all the food banks, finding out what they needed, figuring out where they needed it, whether it was a direct delivery to their food bank or whether it was a direct distribution. 2 days later, we had trucks on the road, and I was able to participate with Chobani down at the largest distribution in the history of the Long Island Food Bank, Long Island Harvest, that following day. So pretty dramatic. It's had a great effect on both ends of the food supply chain, the farms and the people who needed the food. Clearly, domestic violence is continuing to be something that has to be looked at. There's a number of initiatives here, very important to achieving that very elusive goal. As you know, the governor has been speaking about this for many months now. Again, we saw some challenges all around the country with systemic injustice. We need to make sure that our police departments and our communities are on the same page and understand how they can work together in a more effective way. The Liberty Defense Fund has been something very important to us in the agricultural community in particular, but all around the state. We saw a dramatic increase in Border Patrol raids, Homeland Security interfering with operations and businesses and farms around the state. And the Liberty Defense Fund was there to help defend people who didn't have the opportunity for defense in their case. It seems like this has become the norm, that we have disruptions to our electricity service around the state with the weather and the changes in the weather patterns that we see. So this is going to be a focus as we go forward as well. And with us using the internet more and more and more and more, obviously we need to take care, make sure we have security there. Fresh in everyone's head, I think, is the election system and the concerns about how we can make it reflective, up to date. And we're looking at additional voting hours and the opportunity to have more absentee voting, making it easier for people to exercise their freedom. So I think that it was a pretty challenging year, clearly. You learn things when you get challenged in a big way. On a farm, you learn things when it goes below zero. You find your vulnerabilities, and certainly for the state, when we went through COVID-19, we learned some things. I'm very confident we're going the right way, have the right kind of leadership, and that we've got a good plan going forward. As the governor says, reimagine, rebuild, and renew. I'm excited to be a part of this, and what an opportunity it is for a farm kid from Schoharie to be a part of this effort. So where am I here? I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to you, Carrie.
All right, thank you very much for that great overview. So I'd ask anybody who has a question, Commissioner Ball has a few minutes and can answer a couple of questions. Please use the Q&A. I do have one, Commissioner, so I'll go ahead and read it. This is from our planning department in Chenango County. In order to provide affordable internet to low-income families, we first need New York State to invest additional funding for broadband availability in our rural areas. Governor Cuomo, in his State of the State, claimed 98% of households and businesses have access to broadband in New York State. Being on the ground level, we know that's not true. We asked Governor Cuomo to investigate the 98% claim and encourage him to use individual homes as a data source, not census blocks, where if one home has broadband available, the entire block is considered served. Commissioner Ball, have you heard any discussion about this at the state level regarding what FCC is claimed and what's actual on the ground?
Yeah, actually, we talk about it at a fairly high levels in New York, and obviously it's holding up rural development and economic development in our rural communities in a big way. It's also something that we're talking about across the state departments of agriculture. I sit on the board of the state departments of ag, and all 50 commissioners in 4 territories. This is front and center for all of us, because in agriculture, we obviously occupy the rural parts of all our states. Same challenge in all the states. Promises have been made by companies that have been engaged to help carry this out. So this remains a big issue. I'll certainly record that and bring it back and re-emphasize this concern.
Great, thank you very much.
While people are thinking, I just, if it's all right, I'm just going to
Yes,
mention
please.
a couple of things that are concerns for me broadly. Obviously, in agriculture and COVID-19 and the effect it had on our food supply chain. What's happening nationally, what's happening in Washington, D.C., we're all watching very closely about the changes that we're seeing. For me, at the Department of Agriculture in New York, I deal most directly with USDA. I deal a lot with FDA. We deal quite a bit with EPA as well. So a concern is the change here at USDA. I'm optimistic. Secretary Vilsack is coming back. Secretary Vilsack knows New York State. He actually went to Hamilton College. He actually went to Albany Law School. He and I know each other. We're friends. I'm feeling very good about his leadership and the fact that he understands the job. His deputy secretary, the former commissioner of agriculture in Virginia, is a friend. So I feel pretty good about the top tier of leadership at USDA. We're going to have to watch very closely trade. As you know, USMCA came to pass in the last few years. I get to sit at the Tri-National Accord representing New York when we discuss trade issues with Canada and with Mexico. We're going to have to watch very closely the Food Safety Modernization Act, which has put FDA in charge of food safety on farms. So we're working very closely with FDA on that. Those are things that we're going to need to pay very close attention to in New York. But obviously, things I'm excited about, Nourish New York, that relationship between our growers and the people who need food is going to be, has been just a home run and a great example of connecting the dots. I think the budget for agriculture, I have to say that in spite of a very difficult economic picture for New York State, I have been given in the last 3 years the largest executive budget for agriculture ever given to the Department of Ag by any governor in history, 3 years running. So we've got a very stable picture as we begin the year here. Clearly, the legislature weighs in and they negotiate the final budget for April 1st with the governor. And I think that if there is a silver lining to this pandemic, it is that New Yorkers have recognized the importance of their food supply chain. They recognize the importance of having that in the state and not to depend on a foreign country or another state for our food. And overall, I think in New York State, we're in a good place. We have good growers. We rank in the top 10 over 30 different crops. And we have access to water, good land, and we've got access to the biggest marketplace in the world. So,
Commissioner, we have another question if you have just another few
Sure.
minutes.
Yep.
So this comes from Mayor Wade, who I know you said you are familiar with, representing Cambridge. There's a lot of good things in this year's budget, but there seems to be a lack of support and increase to AIM, which is jeopardizing our small village and town budgets. So taking AIM from sales tax distribution is affecting those. What can we do to possibly reverse this, what seems to be a bias against rural communities? Do you have any feedback on that?
Sure. Well, I think it's impacting, obviously, I live in Schoharie, similar community to Bainbridge in scope and size. I think that as we see the federal rollout of aid to states and localities is going to take the pressure off that in a big way. The governor a couple of years ago asked me to look at rural development. We became a one-stop shop here at the Department of Ag for that, with all the state agencies that have some piece of rural development. I think that clearly that's an avenue we have to pay attention to. I think there are 18 state agencies that have some piece of this pie, and we're trying to be the funnel point and the one-stop shop for that. So as I think we go forward with the budget and see what Washington actually does, we'll be able to speak directly to the mayor's concerns.
Thank you. So I have one more question before we move on with the rest of our presentation. And this comes from my colleague at Watkins Glen Chamber, the president of that chamber, Hardy. So he says, thank you for your time. And he agrees that broadband is indeed a challenge for our residents, visitors, and businesses to function at their maximum efficiencies in the Southern Tier and, of course, throughout the Finger Lakes. He said, this cannot be understated. And there are many phoenixes that can come out of this COVID-19 fire. Building this infrastructure will allow us to groom these phoenixes. So is there another phoenix from this that you and or the governor can see coming forth for New York State?
Yes. But I think first we've got to get over that hurdle. I mean, that really is, you know, the opportunity to be a part of the economy, whether you live in an urban center or you live in rural upstate New York. We've got to get over that hurdle. There's just no question about it. We learned it when our kids were at school remotely. We've learned it when most of the world found a way to work remotely. It changed the complexion of a lot of our rural communities. So many rural communities found that every second home, every camp, every available house on the marketplace was suddenly full of someone coming from an urban center looking to protect their families. Well, that creates some great opportunities for local communities, certainly. But it doesn't work if you're not connected to the rest of the world and can't participate fully in that economy. So when we talk about and say words like Build Back Better, clearly that has to be part of that. And I think once those arteries are open and functioning, then I think there's going to be a lot of phoenixes out there. I really do. Particularly from my own viewpoint in agriculture, in the food system world. When we saw this disruption, 50% of what agriculture does in New York goes into the restaurant world, the food service world, schools and institutions. Fully half of what we produce goes in that direction. And when that valve got shut off by the pandemic, suddenly we had to immediately reroute stuff, figure out how to get it to people. So again, that silver lining that I talk about, I think we were forced to look at our emergency food system. We had good relationships there already with our work on hunger and food policy, but those relationships were there. They need to be stronger. I think that bodes well for our rural communities when they find they have new customers, new markets, new opportunities. And clearly the work that we've been doing for many years, temporarily suspended with the pandemic on farm to school and getting New York schools using New York agricultural products. It's going to give us better outcomes economically on our farm community and rural communities, and also give our children better advantages in nutrition as they go forward. And we'll see better outcomes 10 years down the road as well. So those things that got teased and interrupted a little bit, but got shown to be very important from the pandemic will, as we go forward, I think serve us well.
Great. Your time with us today, and you know, if you we're welcome to have you stay for the rest of our presentation if you have a few minutes. As I said, we'll send this recording out, and if there's questions that we did not get, we'll be sure to get them to the proper offices. So thank you so much again, Commissioner, for being here, and hopefully next year we'll be back in Chenango County in person. We'll be able to see you.
Well, certainly going to look forward to that, and I'm going to hold you to that as well. So thank you so
absolutely
much.
Absolutely. So next, I'm finding a new panelist we're going to join. All right. So now I would like to introduce Chairman Senek. Chairman Senek is the new chairman of the Chenango County Board of Supervisors as of this past January. And he is the supervisor for the town of Guilford. And we really appreciate his collaboration. And, you know, our office works very closely with our Chenango County legislature. So Chairman Senek had agreed to join on with us today and say a few words to all of our attendees. So Chairman, welcome.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. A little bit of working with technology here. I think 2021 is going to be a challenging year for the county board, and I think for a lot of businesses in our county. Certainly, there's a lot of readjustment due to COVID. I think there's a number of things that we're looking at in-house in the county. Currently, we're looking at, I'm going to say, restructuring our IT department to hopefully make it work a little bit more efficiently and better serve our departments. We've had a couple meetings now regarding EMS services and potentially what can be done to provide the entire county with better emergency services. Those are probably the biggest things that are out there. I'm very pleased to see that the Chamber is working once again to try to improve broadband in the county, which is definitely an issue. Short story is Wednesday night, we went to do our town board Zoom meeting, and my internet was down at the house again. So a quick trip back to the town hall, we pulled everything off. But I think the reliability of internet in the county is one of those phoenixes that's going to be out there for development. You know, can we have people come into the county? A lot of people from downstate have been looking at properties. They like the rural setting, but a lot of them are going to need internet. So I think those are going to be some very important things as we move forward. And I look forward once again to working closely with the Chamber, promoting tourism in the county. I know we've had a new county historian appointed with a deputy that will be coming on board that I think has some fantastic ideas about tying some of our historic interests in the county and things that we have in with our tourism. I want to thank Carrie for this opportunity, and I look forward once again to in person having an opportunity to be talking with people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman. All right. So just once again, you know, our events we have coming up, I mentioned a couple earlier that we have. Please, you know, check out our website if you haven't yet. Our website was redone back in the fall, and you know, there's a lot of great information, a lot of content with all of our different agencies around the county. We have wonderful photos, such as the photo behind me. This is downtown Norwich. It's gorgeous. We're going to pretend that there's no snow and it's not winter. So, but please take a look at our website. We have a lot of great information there, completely redone. You know, we're very active in social media. So if you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, we're on it. So we look forward to more collaborating with our constituents and with our colleagues across the Southern Tier. And please, if you can join us for either the Economic Outlook briefing on February 25th, and this is strictly virtual and it's free for Chamber members. Thank you to MBT Bank for being our headlining sponsor and Preferred Mutual Insurance Company for being a supporting sponsor. And we are very excited about our new talent pipeline and population recovery strategy summit that will be held virtually in May. So thank you once again for attending, and the recording of this will be available later today. Thank you so much, and remember, we are working together to move Chenango forward.